This was just going to be paint and decorate. And 2 years later, we ripped everything out. There wasn't anything left of it. So it was a very traditional log house. It was a builder spec, and that's kind of what precipitated everything being ripped out when the client started to see that quality was not the order of the day. The client has basically Swedish roots. They live in Hong Kong, but they drove the palette, the beautiful carpet that's from the rug company that anchors the space. That was her sort of first tear sheet that she brought to us, and it was like, yes, color. It was fun to work with, and so her sense of color shows up really throughout this whole house, and was really kind of fun to be able to use a lot stronger colors than we don't normally get pigeonholed with. We do a lot of taupes, grays, and beiges, and they're wonderful, and it's very Pacific Northwest, and it works great, but it's kind of fun to have a bit of color in the space. And talking of the big spaces, the only significant changes that we made, because it was mostly the log structure, is we lowered the windows to take advantage of the view, probably by about 2.5, 3 feet. It was very odd, very strange. And I'll move to the next photo that shows the same room, because the other piece that we added to really give a sense of presence was the fireplace and rock wall. There's a very insignificant, smaller builder fireplace within the space, and it just wasn't enough to anchor it. So we chose the large-scale rock, took it to the ceiling, and then slowly articulated the volume down with the sort of the reclaimed wood as the overheight mantle, and slowly working its way back down to the seating arrangement. Very much just like what Robert had done in his arrangements, is large sofa, large pair of lamps, which is a nice beacon and a nice sort of very warm way of anchoring a space, especially at nighttime ambience with the lighting. And the furnishings, again, slightly bigger on scale, extra comfy. It's a family house. They have kids, and it gets used a lot. It was just meant to be super comfortable in the room. They didn't have a family room per se. This is the family room. This is the kitchen of the space, far more traditional again, because it's basically the blue and white Swedish colors. That was part of the client's directive, and it was fun to do something a little bit more on the traditional side. We still custom did the cabinetry, took the sort of shaker door style, thinned out the depth of the profile, and then took the oversized panels to give it a little bit more of a contemporary edge, taking away, just making it not so traditional. And we still had this sort of odd double height volume, which I can show how it relates to the kitchen. There's kind of dining room, kitchen, back to the breakfast space. The kitchen island, which really, the whole kitchen didn't exist in this. I mean, there was a very chopped up kitchen, but not in this inception. We added the large family island, knowing that that's going to be action central for family life, and that's pretty much where they do spend most of their time, is around there. Kids are usually around the end of it, the adults are at the opposite end, and we basically use that island as the bridge between the dining room and that other, so this small double height space that was the breakfast room, and then using the iron chandelier in that double height space to sort of bring the height down, give a little bit more sense of intimacy in the space. And the dining room then, from the opposite view looking back to the living room, we utilized a very simple, inexpensive light fixture, but a way of helping break down the volume of the space and layering one space to the next. So you got a little more sense of intimacy within a living room, dining room, breakfast room, kitchen that's really all interconnected, but we articulated it in different degrees between ceiling and lighting and furnishings, obviously, to sort of come up with those results. Then I believe the next picture, is their master suite. And this was just basically showing how we'd use base color and pattern and texture to sort of add intimacy and warmth to the space. It wasn't particularly big in terms of width, but it was very tall. Then again, just like what Robert was saying, draperies, they always work well. They just give such a warmth and such a beautiful sense of elegance to a tall space. And the flame stitch was just a bit of fun pattern to add a little bit more kinetic energy within the sort of fairly quiet, fairly calming bedroom. And again, the views of Whistler, just like Robert said, beautiful wallpaper from beyond, so it looks pretty awesome. Now, this is one we did many years ago that people probably know from Western Living, but I wanted to include it because it really spoke in terms of our portfolio of work, what big spaces can be, how they can be challenging, and then how we kind of tackled them. And what have we got? This is the living dining space, and it's the bridge that basically was the connection point between the lake and a courtyard of the house. We worked again right from the beginning with the architect, so we got the luxury of being able to dictate a lot of the details and articulation within the space. On the large rock wall, we basically added the silver limestone, the silver travertine surround and hearth to be a much more tailored counterpoint to the rough-hewn ledge stone. And we also punched in the niche to sort of break down the mass of that wall. Otherwise, it was just going to feel like there was too much rock. And this client Although for me, it would have been a great opportunity to try some artwork. They didn't really have any artwork to say that they wanted to include in this house. So a niche it was, and some very insignificant accessories, but it made it pretty, but it helped break down the mass of the stone. Furnishings, again, it's just very much like Robert was saying, very comfortable, oversized pieces, pair of large lamps to act as beacons to separate the space, extra long dining table for entertaining, and then everything's just anchored on a very simple carpet. The master bedroom is definitely a monumental bedroom, and this one was definitely a slave to symmetry, which was very much directed by the client. They were absolutely insistent about the symmetrical compositions. It was fun to sort of do this one because it was allowing us to take a very vast room and feeling that we could break it down. So including the custom millwork on the sides was a sort of a direct response to adding it across on the bedroom side to bridge those two materials across the room. We chose to sort of hold the millwork together just with the drywall, again referencing the drywall on the opposite side of the room. And then the room looks through to a closet and then layers through to the master bedroom. Furnishings are all somewhat in a normal scale, but the use of millwork, lighting, etc. helps bring the scale of the room down, as well as the inclusion of the giant oversized mirrors. And just like we did on the house that I had showed you, the bachelor house, we articulated the ceiling so that we didn't just have a plain ceiling plane, and it allowed sort of bringing the ceiling down visually. Even though it is a 16-foot ceiling, it doesn't have that sense of being cavernous or sort of out of scale in human touch, but it is obviously a monumental room. There's, again, obviously pure symmetry. Everything was completely unfolded in that view. But it does give the sense of using materials, color, texture, that it is actually a very sensuous, very warm bedroom. It wasn't the space didn't feel uninviting. Bathroom was massive, and the way we chose to break it down was taking the toilet area and the shower area, which are the two frosted glass pavilions, and we purposely enclosed those in the frosted glass to take the oversized space down a little bit more into human scale, as well as dropping the ceiling over them to just add a little bit more of articulation to the overheight space. And the statuario on the floor is really the artwork to that space. It's just beautifully book-matched stone that really adds the character in that space, and just giant ottoman to throw robes, etc. on. This is looking towards one of the vanities. Of course, there was a pair of them. It was perfectly symmetrical, but we chose to articulate the height of the room by carving the mirror into the wall, going full height, and then just doing oversized custom pendants to anchor the vanity to bring it down a little bit in scale, but it really is a bit more of the celebration of height and space in that area, and then using the material, the wood, to add a bit more warmth and human sort of quality to that space. There's the shower. It's just a riot of stone, but it was just kind of the surprise inside. The client was actually happy that it was just for him. It wasn't for show, that he wanted to see those great slabs, but everybody that I showed you sees the devil in the middle of the painting, so. So that's something they had to look at, I didn't. But there he is, but he's happy. And this is probably the biggest kitchen I've ever worked on. Although I think Robert's is definitely trumping mine now in Los Angeles. And basically this I think was about 16 foot or more. I can't remember the stats on it. But we basically started, when we did the planning, we just put the appliances into place and worked backwards up to the ceiling. And basically, as you can see, we dropped drywall around the basic frame of the millwork, which is basically, containing the appliances. We then did just basically decorative panels above those pieces and articulated all the way down to the appliances. So it was sort of playing a rhythm all the way from the window line down to the human scale of the room. And you can see it was taken from the basic window input that was on basically the window of the terrace, as well as we chose to put wood paneling on the ceiling to help contain that space visually. Oh, next front. I thought I had one more of that job. On to the last slide. We're almost done. This was a beach house that you're probably familiar with because we had done a while back, but I wanted to include it because it was basically all this is just a single bedroom. That's how the job started. And how we got the job is which is what you're not supposed to do as a designer, but I gave them a concept sketch, just like, this is what I think. And they bought it, but don't do that. It's not smart. So anyways, the concept sketch won, but it was the idea of basically implementing that giant fireplace to divide the space up. And then also exposing the bathroom as an actual exposed element to the bedroom and not hiding it. Knowing that the client wasn't going to be too shy, we had a little bit of backstory on him, so it wasn't a complete shot in the dark. The client did want everything white. They were really insistent that it was an all-white room, and I just didn't feel comfortable with it. So I kept pushing him to use wood, and so we did the entire back wall of the room, which you can see a bit there, all in a cherused oak paneling. And that whole cherused oak piece basically anchors all that whiteness to the back of the house. So we really used it as a strong visual catch to give some intimacy to that space, and then just did some very small onyx ledgestone that sort of articulates the basic surround on the fireplace that ties into that basic color of the wood. And then the closet, which I didn't think he'd go for, but they did it, is we did it all in velvet drapery. So instead of doing doors, the closet was completely swathed in that sort of rich taupe color velvet, and they just pulled apart to expose all of the mess that would be behind it in a typical closet. And then I think the last shot, which is just the pretty sunset shot, I had to finish with it. Robert got that idea. Pretty sunsets are always good to finish on, or pretty views. It's always good. But it shows the basic room in its best light. Sitting area, beautiful fireplace, floating bed that sits on the glass wall, bathroom that separates it, and then basically the toilet room is actually behind the wood wall that you saw that ran the length of the bedroom. And it's sort of odd trapezoidal shape, and then we also articulated by throwing in the round skylights into the ceiling, and then just arranging the lighting accordingly so that it basically supported the architecture that we imposed into the space. And then he still got the white, and we got the wood, so it was a happy marriage at the end. And tried to get through as many photos in a hurry as I could, so that's kind of it.